Welcome to Vale of the Bible, where ancient stories come alive with power and purpose. Today, we unveil one of the most shocking transformations in human history, a story of betrayal, resilience, and divine orchestration that will challenge everything you believe about adversity. Subscribe now and witness how God turns prisoners into princes. Imagine being sold into slavery by your own brothers. Imagine losing everything in a single day, your family, your freedom, your future. This is exactly what happened to a 17-year-old boy whose name would echo through eternity. His journey from the depths of despair to the pinnacle of power will leave you breathless. Hit that like button if you're ready for a story that proves no pit is too deep for God's purpose. Comment below and tell us about a time when your greatest setback became your greatest comeback. Now, let's dive into the extraordinary life of Joseph, the dreamer who became Egypt's savior. Chapter 1. The Favored Son's Fall. In the ancient land of Canaan, Jacob had 12 sons, but one held a special place in his heart. Joseph, born in his father's old age, was cherished above all others. This favoritism would spark a jealousy so intense that it would tear a family apart and set in motion events that would change the course of history. Jacob's love for Joseph wasn't hidden. He crafted a magnificent coat of many colors, a symbol of favor that his brothers couldn't ignore. Every thread told a story of preference, every hue a reminder that Joseph was the chosen one. As the young man wore this coat, he unknowingly painted a target on his back that would soon lead to his downfall. But Joseph's favor went beyond material gifts. God had blessed him with an extraordinary ability, the gift of prophetic dreams. At 17, he began receiving visions that revealed his future prominence. These weren't ordinary dreams. They were divine revelations that showed his family bowing before him in reverence and submission. The first dream was startling. Joseph saw himself and his brothers binding sheaves in the field when suddenly his sheaf rose and stood upright while theirs gathered around and bowed down. The symbolism was unmistakable. Joseph would rule over his siblings. When he shared this vision, their hearts burned with indignation and resentment. A second dream followed, even more provocative than the first. This time, the sun, moon, and 11 stars were bowing down to him. The sun represented his father, the moon his mother, and the stars his brothers. Even Jacob was troubled by this dream's implications, though he kept these things in his heart, wondering what God was revealing. The brothers' hatred intensified with each passing day. They couldn't speak peacefully to Joseph anymore. His dreams, his coat, his father's obvious favoritism, everything about him became a source of bitter resentment. They began plotting, their hearts hardening like stone, preparing for an opportunity to eliminate the dreamer once and for all. That opportunity came when Jacob sent Joseph to check on his brothers, who were pasturing flocks near Shechem. The young man embarked on this journey with an innocent heart, unaware that he was walking into a trap that would forever alter his destiny. His brothers saw him coming from a distance, and their murderous intentions crystallized. "Here comes that dreamer," they said with venom in their voices. "Come now, let's kill him and throw him into one of these cisterns. We'll say a ferocious animal devoured him. Then we'll see what comes of his dreams." The very gifts that God had given Joseph were now being used as justification for fratricide by his own flesh and blood. But Reuben, the eldest, couldn't bear the thought of murder. He convinced them to throw Joseph alive into an empty cistern instead, secretly planning to rescue him later. When Joseph arrived, they seized him, stripped off his beautiful coat, and cast him into the dark, dry pit. His cries for mercy echoed in the wilderness, but their hearts remained unmoved. As they sat down to eat, callously ignoring Joseph's pleas from the pit, a caravan of Ishmaelite traders appeared on the horizon. Judah saw an opportunity for profit instead of murder. "What will we gain if we kill our brother?" he reasoned. "Come, let's sell him to the Ishmaelites." They pulled Joseph from the cistern and sold him for 20 shekels of silver. The transaction was complete. Joseph, once the beloved son wearing a coat of many colors, was now a piece of merchandise heading toward Egypt in chains. The brothers watched as the caravan disappeared into the desert, carrying away their brother and their secret. But their cruelty demanded a cover-up that would devastate their father's heart. They took Joseph's coat, killed a goat, and dipped the garment in its blood. When they returned home, they presented this evidence to Jacob, saying, "We found this. Examine it to see whether it is your son's robe." The old man's world shattered. "It is my son's robe," he cried. "Some ferocious animal has devoured him. Joseph has surely been torn to pieces." Jacob tore his clothes and put on sackcloth, mourning for his son many days. His children tried to comfort him, but he refused consolation, saying, "I will continue to mourn until I join my son in the grave." Meanwhile, the Midianites sold Joseph in Egypt to Potiphar, an official of Pharaoh and captain of the guard. The dreamer had become a slave. Chapter 2. Chains and Character. In Egypt, far from his homeland and family, Joseph faced a choice that would define his character. He could become bitter, rebellious, and vengeful, or he could serve with excellence even in slavery. Remarkably, he chose the path of integrity. The Lord was with Joseph, and he prospered even in the house of his Egyptian master. Potiphar quickly recognized that there was something different about this Hebrew slave. Everything Joseph touched flourished. Every task he undertook succeeded. The captain of the guard saw that the Lord gave Joseph success in everything he did, and this divine favor couldn't be hidden or ignored. It shone like a beacon in the darkness of slavery. Joseph found favor in Potiphar's eyes and became his attendant. Soon he was put in charge of his household and everything he owned. From the moment Joseph was placed in authority, the Lord blessed the household of the Egyptian because of him. The blessing of the Lord was on everything Potiphar had, both in the house and in the field. Potiphar left everything he had in Joseph's care. He didn't concern himself with anything except the food he ate. Joseph was well built and handsome, managing the entire estate with wisdom beyond his years. His master trusted him completely, a remarkable testament to Joseph's character. But this prosperity would soon face its greatest test through temptation. After a while, Potiphar's wife took notice of Joseph. Day after day, she cast her eyes upon this handsome young Hebrew who managed her household so skillfully. Her desire grew into an obsession, and eventually she made her intentions clear. "Come to bed with me." But Joseph's response would prove the depth of his character and his fear of the Lord. "My master has withheld nothing from me except you, because you are his wife," Joseph replied firmly. "How then could I do such a wicked thing and sin against God?" His refusal wasn't just about loyalty to Potiphar. It was about his relationship with the Almighty. Joseph understood that sexual immorality wasn't just a betrayal of human trust. It was rebellion against God himself. Day after day, she spoke to Joseph, pressing him to compromise his values. But he refused to lie with her or even be with her alone, understanding the danger of placing himself in tempting situations. Joseph's wisdom went beyond mere resistance. He actively avoided circumstances that might weaken his resolve. Integrity requires both decision and distance from compromise. One day, when no one else was around, Potiphar's wife caught Joseph by his cloak and demanded, "Come to bed with me." But he left his cloak in her hand and ran out of the house. Joseph chose temporary embarrassment over permanent shame. He understood that sometimes running away isn't cowardice, it's the highest form of courage and wisdom. Hell hath no fury like a woman scorned. When she saw that he had left his cloak in her hand and had run out of the house, her desire turned to vengeful rage. She called to the servants and fabricated a lie. "This Hebrew has been brought to us to make sport of us. He came in here to sleep with me, but I screamed for help." When Potiphar came home, his wife repeated her false accusation, holding Joseph's cloak as evidence. "That Hebrew slave you brought us came to me to make sport of me, but as soon as I screamed for help, he left his cloak beside me and ran out of the house." The very garment that proved Joseph's integrity became the instrument of his condemnation. Potiphar's anger burned when he heard his wife's story. Despite Joseph's years of faithful service and the obvious blessing that had followed his management, the word of an Egyptian wife carried more weight than the character of a Hebrew slave. Potiphar had Joseph seized and thrown into prison, the very place where the king's prisoners were confined. What do you think about Joseph's story so far? Here's a young man who chose integrity over compromise, faithfulness over convenience, and righteousness over pleasure, yet he found himself in prison for crimes he didn't commit. Does this resonate with your own experiences of doing right yet facing wrong consequences? Share your thoughts in the comments below. Even in prison, Joseph refused to become bitter or blame God for his circumstances. The Lord was with him and showed him kindness, granting him favor in the eyes of the prison warden. Once again, Joseph's character shone through the darkness of his circumstances. The warden recognized something special about this Hebrew prisoner who served with excellence despite his unjust situation. Chapter 3. Dreams in the Dungeon. The prison warden put Joseph in charge of all those held in the prison, and he was made responsible for all that was done there. The warden paid no attention to anything under Joseph's care, because the Lord was with Joseph and gave him success in whatever he did. Even in chains, Joseph's leadership abilities flourished. Sometime later, Pharaoh's cupbearer and baker offended their royal master and were imprisoned in the same facility where Joseph was confined. The captain of the guard assigned them to Joseph's care, and he attended them. These weren't ordinary prisoners. They were high-ranking officials who had direct access to Pharaoh himself, though they didn't know their imprisonment was part of God's plan. After they had been in custody for some time, each of the two men, the cupbearer and the baker of the king of Egypt, who were being held in prison, had a dream the same night. Each dream had its own meaning, and both men woke up troubled, sensing that their dreams carried significant weight but unable to interpret their mysterious messages. When Joseph came to them the next morning, he saw they were dejected and asked, "Why do you look so sad today?" They answered, "We both had dreams, but there is no one to interpret them." Joseph's response revealed his humble dependence on God. Do not interpretations belong to God? Tell me your dreams. He didn't claim personal ability, but acknowledged divine source. The chief cupbearer told Joseph his dream first. "In my dream, I saw a vine in front of me, and on the vine were 3 branches. As soon as it budded, it blossomed, and its clusters ripened into grapes. Pharaoh's cup was in my hand, and I took the grapes, squeezed them into Pharaoh's cup, and put the cup in his hand." The symbolism was vivid, but needed divine interpretation. Joseph immediately understood the dream's meaning through divine revelation. "The 3 branches are 3 days, he explained. "Within 3 days, Pharaoh will lift up your head and restore you to your position, and you will put Pharaoh's cup in his hand, just as you used to do when you were his cupbearer." The interpretation brought hope to the dejected official. But Joseph added a personal request to his interpretation. "When all goes well with you, remember me and show me kindness. Mention me to Pharaoh and get me out of this prison. I was forcibly carried off from the land of the Hebrews, and even here I have done nothing to deserve being put in a dungeon." Joseph's appeal was both humble and honest about his unjust circumstances. When the chief baker saw that Joseph had given a favorable interpretation to the cupbearer, he eagerly shared his own dream. "I too had a dream. On my head were 3 baskets of bread. In the top basket were all kinds of baked goods for Pharaoh, but the birds were eating them out of the basket on my head." He hoped for equally good news, but dreams don't always bring pleasant messages. Joseph's face grew somber as he received the interpretation from God. "The 3 baskets are 3 days, he said gently but truthfully. "Within 3 days, Pharaoh will lift off your head and impale your body on a pole, and the birds will eat away your flesh." Sometimes God's servants must deliver difficult truths with compassion, even when the message brings sorrow rather than joy. 3 days later was Pharaoh's birthday, and he gave a feast for all his officials. He lifted up the heads of the chief cupbearer and the chief baker in the presence of his officials, exactly as Joseph had interpreted. He restored the chief cupbearer to his position, so that he once again put the cup into Pharaoh's hand. But he impaled the chief baker, just as Joseph had said. Thank you so much for staying with us this far in Joseph's incredible journey. Your engagement means everything to us. What we've witnessed so far, the betrayal, the integrity and temptation, the unjust imprisonment, is just the beginning. The best is yet to come, and you won't believe the miraculous turn this story is about to take. Keep watching. But the chief cupbearer, despite Joseph's accurate interpretation that saved his life and restored his position, did not remember Joseph. He forgot him completely, leaving the Hebrew dreamer languishing in prison for 2 more long years. Sometimes God's timing requires seasons of waiting that test our faith and refine our character in ways we cannot understand. 2 full years passed. Joseph remained faithful in prison, serving with excellence despite being forgotten by those he had helped. Little did he know that his season of waiting was about to end dramatically. Pharaoh himself was about to have dreams that would trouble his spirit and require interpretation, dreams that only Joseph could unlock through divine revelation. Chapter 4. From Prison to Palace. When 2 full years had passed, Pharaoh had a dream that shook him to his core. He was standing by the Nile River when 7 cows, sleek and fat, came up from the river and grazed among the reeds. After them, 7 other cows, ugly and gaunt, came up from the Nile and stood beside those on the riverbank. The ugly, gaunt cows ate up the 7 sleek, fat cows. Pharaoh woke up troubled, but when he fell asleep again, he had a second dream. 7 heads of grain, healthy and good, were growing on a single stalk. After them, 7 other heads of grain sprouted, thin and scorched by the east wind. The thin heads of grain swallowed up the 7 healthy, full heads. Pharaoh woke up realizing these were no ordinary dreams, but divine messages requiring interpretation. In the morning, Pharaoh's mind was troubled, so he sent for all the magicians and wise men of Egypt. He told them his dreams, but no one could interpret them for him. The most learned scholars in the most advanced civilization of the ancient world were powerless to unlock the meaning of these divine visions. Human wisdom had reached its limit. Divine intervention was required. Then the chief cupbearer spoke up to Pharaoh, "Today I am reminded of my shortcomings." Pharaoh was once angry with his servants, and he imprisoned me and the chief baker in the house of the captain of the guard. Each of us had a dream the same night, and each dream had a meaning of its own. Suddenly Joseph's faithful service was about to receive its reward. A young Hebrew was there with us, a servant of the captain of the guard. We told him our dreams, and he interpreted them for us, giving each man the interpretation of his dream. And things turned out exactly as he interpreted them to us. I was restored to my position, and the other man was impaled. The cupbearer's testimony opened the door for Joseph's greatest opportunity. So Pharaoh sent for Joseph, and he was quickly brought from the dungeon. When he had shaved and changed his clothes, he came before Pharaoh. After years of imprisonment, Joseph found himself standing before the most powerful man in the ancient world. His journey from pit to prison to palace was about to reach its climactic moment through divine appointment and supernatural interpretation. Pharaoh said to Joseph, "I had a dream, and no one can interpret it. But I have heard it said of you that when you hear a dream, you can interpret it." Joseph's response revealed his humility and dependence on God. "I cannot do it, but God will give Pharaoh the answer he desires." Once again, Joseph deflected glory to the Almighty, acknowledging the true source of wisdom. Pharaoh told Joseph his dreams about the 7 fat cows devoured by 7 lean ones, and the 7 full heads of grain consumed by 7 thin ones. Joseph listened intently, waiting for divine revelation. When Pharaoh finished speaking, Joseph began to interpret with confidence and clarity that could only come from God. The dreams of Pharaoh are one and the same. God has revealed to Pharaoh what he is about to do. The 7 good cows are 7 years, and the 7 good heads of grain are 7 years. It is one and the same dream. The 7 lean, ugly cows that came up afterward are 7 years, and so are the 7 worthless heads of grain scorched by the east wind. They are 7 years of famine. Joseph's interpretation revealed a 14-year cycle that would affect the entire known world. 7 years of great abundance are coming throughout the land of Egypt, but 7 years of famine will follow them. Then all the abundance in Egypt will be forgotten, and the famine will ravage the land. The abundance in the land will not be remembered, because the famine that follows it will be so severe. Joseph didn't just interpret, he revealed God's purpose and timing with precision. But Joseph went beyond interpretation to offer divine wisdom for action. Let Pharaoh look for a discerning and wise man and put him in charge of the land of Egypt. Let Pharaoh appoint commissioners over the land to take 1/5 of the harvest of Egypt during the 7 years of abundance. He proposed a comprehensive economic strategy to save not just Egypt, but surrounding nations. They should collect all the food of these good years that are coming and store up the grain under the authority of Pharaoh, to be kept in the cities for food. This food should be held in reserve for the country, to be used during the 7 years of famine that will come upon Egypt, so that the country may not be ruined by the famine. Joseph's plan would preserve millions of lives. The plan seemed good to Pharaoh and to all his officials. Pharaoh asked them, "Can we find anyone like this man, one in whom is the Spirit of God?" Then Pharaoh said to Joseph, "Since God has made all this known to you, there is no one so discerning and wise as you. You shall be in charge of my palace, and all my people are to submit to your orders. Only with respect to the throne will I be greater than you," Pharaoh declared. He took his signet ring from his finger and put it on Joseph's finger. He dressed him in robes of fine linen and put a gold chain around his neck. He had him ride in a chariot as his second in command, and people shouted before him, "Make way!" Thus Joseph went from prisoner to prime minister in a single day. Joseph was 30 years old when he entered the service of Pharaoh, king of Egypt. 13 years had passed since he was sold into slavery. 13 years of preparation, testing, and character development. Now he was ready for the responsibility that would save nations. During the 7 years of abundance, Joseph traveled throughout Egypt, collecting and storing grain with the wisdom of divine foresight. When the 7 years of abundance ended, the 7 years of famine began, just as Joseph had predicted. There was famine in all the other lands, but in the whole land of Egypt there was food. When all Egypt began to feel the famine, the people cried to Pharaoh for food. Then Pharaoh told all the Egyptians, "Go to Joseph and do what he tells you." Joseph's faithful preparation saved millions. The famine was severe throughout the world, so all the world came to Egypt to buy grain from Joseph. Among those who came were 10 of his brothers, the same men who had sold him into slavery years earlier. They bowed down before him with their faces to the ground, just as his teenage dreams had foretold. The dreamer had become the deliverer, and his visions were fulfilled. When Joseph revealed his identity to his brothers, he said, "Do not be distressed, and do not be angry with yourselves for selling me here, because it was to save lives that God sent me ahead of you. God sent me ahead of you to preserve for you a remnant on earth and to save your lives by a great deliverance." Joseph understood that God had orchestrated everything, turning evil into good for his purposes. What an incredible journey we've witnessed together. From a spoiled teenager with dreams to a slave, from a prisoner to a prince. Joseph's story proves that no setback is too great for God to transform into a comeback. His life teaches us that integrity in small things prepares us for influence in great things, and that our greatest trials often precede our greatest triumphs. Which part of Joseph's story impacted you most? Was it his integrity in Potiphar's house, his faithfulness in prison, or his forgiveness of his brothers? Share your thoughts in the comments below. Your perspective might encourage someone else who's facing their own pit experience. Don't forget to subscribe to Veil of the Bible for more incredible stories that will strengthen your faith. If this story has inspired you, hit that notification bell so you never miss our latest biblical narratives. Remember, like Joseph, you may be in your own season of preparation right now. Trust the process, maintain your integrity, and believe that God is orchestrating something beautiful behind the scenes of your circumstances. Your palace moment may be closer than you think. Thank you for joining us on this transformational journey through Joseph's life. Before you go, make sure to watch our previous video where we explore another incredible story of divine intervention and human faith. Click the link that appears on your screen now and continue discovering how God works through ordinary people to accomplish extraordinary purposes. Until next time, keep unveiling the truth.